When the grid goes black, your bank account becomes a theoretical abstraction that no longer exists. The comfortable delusion you call society is built on a fragile web of just-in-time logistics and confidence, both of which evaporate within 72 hours of a systemic failure. The old world is over. You are no longer a citizen with civil rights. You are a biological entity fighting against entropy and the inevitable rise of the kill mechanism. In this new reality, value is not determined by market speculation, but by hard logic and physics. The only currency that matters is that which directly intervenes to prevent death. If an item cannot feed you, defend you, or keep your body temperature at homeostasis, it is useless weight. We are stripping away the confident mistakes of the commercial prepper fantasy, the shiny gadgets and tactical cosplay, to focus solely on operational principles. You must understand that you are either a predator, a producer, or a loot drop. There is no middle ground. The items we will analyze are often restricted or banned in the polite world, specifically because they offer too much autonomy and power to the individual. In the post-collapse world, that power is the only thing that separates the living from the dead. We call this the new gold. It is the tangible capacity to exert force and sustain biology. The margin of error is zero. Survival is now a brutal mathematical calculation, and you must acquire these assets now, or you will pay for them later with your life. The first line of defense is not your rifle. It is your bloodstream. In the operational theater of a collapsed society, the most efficient killer is not a marauder, but a microbe. The margin of error is zero. You must construct a biological firewall immediately because the medical infrastructure of the old world is over, and it is never coming back. We begin with the absolute necessity of restricted medical contraband, specifically broad-spectrum antibiotics. You must understand the kill mechanism of infection. Without the complex logistics of modern sanitation, simple lacerations become lethal septic events within days. Hard logic dictates that you cannot rely on herbal remedies or hope when biology turns against you. You need amoxicillin, ciprofloxacin, and doxycycline. In the current paradigm, these are gated behind prescriptions to protect the herd from resistance. But in a post-collapse scenario, that regulation is a death sentence for the unprepared. You must acquire veterinary equivalents often sold as fish antibiotics, which possess the exact same chemical composition as human-grade pharmaceuticals. This is not a suggestion. It is a requirement to avoid becoming a statistic. A minor dental abscess will incapacitate you, drain your caloric reserves, and eventually kill you just as effectively as a bullet. Possessing a stockpile of these compounds turns you from a victim into a biological fortress. The second tier of this firewall addresses the reality of trauma through Schedule II narcotics and high-strength analgesics. Physics dictates that kinetic energy transfers into biological tissue cause catastrophic damage. When you or a team member suffers a fracture or a gunshot wound, pain is not merely a sensation. It is a physiological shock that accelerates calorie bankruptcy. Uncontrolled pain spikes heart rates, depletes glucose, and induces panic, making rational decision-making impossible. You need the capacity to chemically shut down the nervous system's scream. Opioids are the ultimate trade currency because they offer the only tangible relief in a world of endless suffering. Crowd psychology tells us that desperate populations will trade anything to stop the agony of a loved one. By controlling the supply of pain management, you do not just survive, you gain leverage. However, the operational protocol here demands ruthless discipline. These items are dangerous. Mismanagement leads to addiction, which introduces a new failure point. You must treat these substances with the same objective, cold analysis, as you would handling high explosives. They are tools for stabilizing a casualty to facilitate movement or recovery, nothing more. Do not let moral squeamishness prevent you from acquiring these assets. When the ambulance no longer runs, the only thing standing between you and the void is the chemistry you secured while the world was still asleep. In a collapsed environment, fairness is a concept for the dead. You are entering an arena of asymmetric violence where the only objective is to remain operational while threats are neutralized. We now apply the multiplier rule to your defensive capability. The standard prepper philosophy of hoarding cheap ammunition and generic firearms is a confident mistake that will get you killed. You must invest in kinetic multipliers, restricted technologies that allow you to exert force efficiently without alerting the swarm. The first critical asset in this tier is the suppressor. Physics dictates that an unsuppressed gunshot generates a shockwave audible for miles, acting as a dinner bell for every desperate element within the blast radius. In a grid-down city, noise is a beacon that screams loot drop to the surrounding crowd. You must apply the gray man philosophy not just to your appearance, but to your acoustic footprint. Standard firearms are liabilities. A suppressed system allows you to defend your perimeter without announcing your coordinates to the entire sector. Whether through legal acquisition now or the understanding of solvent trap mechanics for emergency fabrication, the ability to mask your kinetic output is the difference between a single engagement and a siege. Once you have controlled the sound, you must address the target. The old world is awash in body armor. Police surplus and military gear will be in the hands of the warlords you face. Standard lead ball ammunition is functionally useless against level full plates. You are facing a brutal mathematical calculation. If your projectile cannot penetrate the obstacle, your energy expenditure is wasted, and you move closer to calorie bankruptcy. You need armor piercing, green tip or black tip, and defensive hollow point ammunition. The multiplier rule states that one effective round is infinitely more valuable than a volume of fire that fails to incapacitate. You are not suppressing the enemy. You are terminating the threat to conserve your own biological resources. Finally, we address the temporal reality of survival. Half of your operational life will occur in darkness. The human eye is biologically inadequate for threat detection at night, making you vulnerable to anyone who has solved this evolutionary defect. You must acquire third-generation night vision or thermal optics. This is not a luxury. It is a fundamental shift in the power dynamic. With thermal capabilities, you are no longer reacting to shadows. You are observing heat signatures through cover and concealment. You own the environment. Without this technology, you are blind for 12 hours a day, paralyzed by the fear of the unknown. Crowd psychology dictates that the mob fears the dark. By conquering it with technology, you become the predator rather than the prey. These items are restricted under ITAR for a reason. Governments know that the ability to see and shoot in the dark without detection is the ultimate equalizer. Secure that power now. The survival fantasy of the lone hunter tracking game through the woods is a confident mistake that leads directly to starvation. In a post-collapse environment, calories are the only fuel for your biological machine. Every step you take, every shivering hour you spend in a tree stand burns finite energy reserves that you cannot easily replace. This leads to calorie bankruptcy, a state where your output exceeds your input until your body cannibalizes its own muscle tissue and you die. You must reject the romanticism of the hunt and embrace the industrial efficiency of the harvest. You need resource acquisition engines that operate on the multiplier rule, maximum return for zero active labor. This brings us to the gill net and the trot line. These items are strictly regulated or banned in the old world specifically because they decimate ecosystems through indiscriminate efficiency. They are weapons of mass consumption. When the grocery stores are empty, fair chase is a luxury you cannot afford. Hard logic dictates that you must secure protein while you sleep. A rifle requires your presence, your focus, and your calories. A gill net stretched across a creek works 24 hours a day, regardless of your physical state. It creates a passive caloric income stream. While the starving crowd creates noise and chaos chasing frightened deer, you will be silently pulling dozens of fish from the water every morning. This is the brutal mathematical calculation of survival. If you are not cheating the odds with industrial harvesting gear, you are losing the game of thermodynamics. You must treat the ecosystem as a resource to be stripped, not preserved, because the alternative is your own biological cessation. Once you have secured protein, you must address the conversion of waste into energy and trade goods via a distillation unit. Physics allows you to take useless biomass, rotting fruit, excess grain, sugar, and convert it into high-proof ethanol. This is not just about producing intoxicants. It is about manufacturing a liquid asset that serves three critical operational functions. First, it is a sterilizing agent. In a world teeming with bacteria, alcohol cleans wounds and sanitizes medical equipment, reinforcing your biological firewall. Second, it is fuel. High-proof alcohol can power internal combustion engines or simple stoves when gasoline degrades into varnish. Third, and most dangerously, it is the ultimate lubricant for crowd psychology. As the reality of the collapse sets in, the psychological break of the population will demand an escape. Alcohol is the most tradable commodity in human history. By controlling the means of production, the copper still, and the knowledge of fermentation, you become a central node in the new economy. You are turning raw, low-value carbohydrates into liquid power. However, be warned. Operating a still creates a heat signature and an olfactory footprint. It requires the same discipline as your kinetic operations. You are manufacturing a controlled substance that desperate men will kill for. Own the production, secure the perimeter, and use the product to buy the loyalty or the labor you cannot generate yourself. The margin of error is zero. If you cannot feed the machine stops. You are now standing in the wreckage of a civilization that locked everything away. In the old world, barriers were respected because of the social contract. In the post-collapse reality, a locked door is simply an obstacle between you and survival. The next tier of your operational protocol is access and control. You must acquire the tools to breach the physical and chemical limitations of your environment. We begin with lockpicking and breaching tools. The city is nothing more than a labyrinth of sealed containers. Every abandoned pharmacy, warehouse, and distribution center is a potential loot drop filled with the calories and medicine you need to delay death. However, if you cannot bypass the locking mechanism, you are merely a starving observer. Hard logic dictates that you must possess the mechanical advantage to defeat tumblers and deadbolts. This is not about theft. It is about resource reclamation in a zero-sum game. You need a quality lockpick set for silent entry, preserving the gray man principle by not announcing your presence with breaking glass, and heavy breaching tools like bolt cutters and Halligan bars for when speed outweighs stealth. Without these tools, you are locked out of the resources that will keep you alive. You must view the urban landscape not as a home, but as a mine to be excavated. Once you have physical access, you must secure the means of production for violence. The supply chains for ammunition and explosives will vanish instantly. Confident mistakes occur when survivors assume they can loot indefinitely. The reality is that finite manufactured goods will run dry. You must stockpile raw chemical precursors, potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal. This is the foundation of black powder. With these simple elements and a basic understanding of high school chemistry, hard logic, and physics, you can manufacture the propellant for firearms or construct improvised explosive devices for area denial. When the factory rounds are gone, the man who can mix his own powder becomes a warlord. This capability separates those who are dependent on a dead system from those who can project power autonomously. It allows you to create perimeter alarms, distraction devices, and lethal force options that do not rely on a scavenged inventory. You are seizing control of the kill mechanism itself. Finally, we turn to the darkest lever of control: crowd psychology and dependency. The most valuable trade goods are not always functional. They are psychological. You must stockpile tobacco, alcohol, as previously noted, and other vices. The population that survives the initial cull will be traumatized, broken, and desperate for chemical escapism. A pack of cigarettes or a bottle of cheap liquor will trade for far more than its weight in gold because it addresses the psychological collapse of the human animal. By holding these items, you are not just a merchant. You are a manipulator of the crowd. You can purchase labor, loyalty, and silence from addicts who have lost the will to endure reality sober. This is the ruthless warning. You are exploiting the weakness of others to ensure your own stability. It is cold, it is predatory, and it is absolutely necessary. While they are trading their last useful assets for a moment of relief, you are accumulating the hard value that ensures your operational continuity. In this new world, you are either the dealer or the addict. Choose your role. The analysis is complete, but the operational reality has just begun. You now possess the intelligence required to transition from a passive victim of circumstance to an active agent of survival. However, understanding the theory of the new gold is meaningless without the physical acquisition of assets. This is the final and most critical filter: the transition from intent to action. The old world is over, and with it, the luxury of procrastination. The supply chains that deliver these 10-banned or restricted items are fragile, monitored, and finite. They function on a just-in-time basis that will shatter the moment the collective panic sets in. If you wait until the event horizon is visible, you have already lost. You must understand that the margin of error is zero. There are no do-overs in a biological collapse. You must reject the confident mistakes of the hobbyist community who treat preparation as a shopping spree for tactical fashion. Instead, you must apply hard logic and physics to your inventory. Look at your current stockpile. Does it contain the kinetic multipliers to defend your perimeter against a desperate crowd? Do you have the biological firewall to survive a simple infection that killed kings in the Dark Ages? Do you have the resource acquisition engines to generate calories while you sleep? If the answer is no, you are currently positioned as a loot drop. You are gathering resources for the first warlord who kicks down your door. This is a brutal mathematical calculation. You either possess the capacity to enforce your will on the environment, or the environment will enforce its entropy on you. The acquisition of these items, suppressors, antibiotics, night vision, distillation units, requires navigating legal and logistical hurdles now, while the grid is still up. This is your window of opportunity. The crowd psychology of the masses is currently asleep, sedated by the normalcy bias of a functioning system. They do not believe the lights will ever go out. Use this apathy to your advantage. While they buy televisions and comfort, you must be quietly securing the tools of power. Do not discuss these acquisitions. Apply the gray man principle to your logistics. The neighbor who knows you have a generator and a gill net is the first threat you will have to neutralize when the trucks stop running. Silence is security. Ultimately, survival is not about hope. It is about protocol. You must internalize the multiplier rule. Every item you own must do the work of 10. Every decision you make must minimize caloric expenditure and maximize survivability. The 10 items we have analyzed are not just objects. They are crystallized time and energy. They are the physical manifestation of your refusal to die. When the collapse comes, money will be printed paper used for kindling. The only wealth will be the ability to stop a fever, silence a gunshot, and catch a fish without effort. You have been warned. The clock is ticking, and the system is straining under the weight of its own complexity. Go out and secure your life before the price becomes too high to pay.